Today we're looking at the Battle of Gettysburg. Hello, welcome to the Daily Bellringer. Please don't forget to subscribe and take a look at the questions down in the description. Also, don't forget to check out dailybellringer.com, where you'll find more resources that go with many of the Bellringer videos. The Battle of Gettysburg was a three-day battle fought here in the summer of 1863 in south-central Pennsylvania. The battle here, coupled with the Union victory at Vicksburg, Mississippi, would be considered the turning point of the American Civil War. After the Confederate victory at the Battle of Chancellorsville, General Robert E. Lee was very optimistic that he could bring the war to an end if the Confederates could win a major victory on Northern soil. So in early June of 1863, Lee and the Army of Northern Virginia crossed over into Maryland, marching right past the Antietam battlefield where they had been turned back on their first attempt to win a victory in the North. Lee hoped to strike as far north as Philadelphia and felt that doing so would force President Lincoln to negotiate peace with the South. Following Lee was General Joseph Hooker and the Army of the Potomac, who had been defeated at Chancellorsville. During the march, just a few days before the Battle of Gettysburg, Hooker resigned his command and General George Meade became the new Union commander. Now, some stories suggest the Battle of Gettysburg was fought here because Confederates were looking for shoes, but actually it was because of the network of roads that met at Gettysburg. Lee dispatched troops to begin preparations at Gettysburg on July 1st, but little did they know that Union cavalry had arrived here the day before. The two armies began to exchange fire, and as they did, reports began flooding back to Lee and Meade of fighting breaking out, and they began to rush their troops to the town. This was a rather strange battle, as the Confederates were attacking from the north and the Union attacking from the south, as they were pursuing the Army of Northern Virginia. The Confederate strength was right about 71,000 troops, while the Union strength was over 93,000 strong, making this one of the largest battles of the war, with somewhere around 160,000 soldiers involved over the 3 days of fighting, July 1st, 2nd, and 3rd of 1863. Throughout the first day of fighting on July 1st, the two armies were trying to get their troops assembled. The fighting was very much focused in the streets of Gettysburg. The residents of Gettysburg hid in their homes and basements, trying not to get caught in the crossfire. The Confederates were able to push the Union forces back through the town to south of the town along a hill known as Cemetery Ridge. The Union troops took up position all along the hill, all the way down to the south end at a place called Little Roundtop. By the second day, July 2nd, both armies were fully assembled. The Union occupied the high ground along Cemetery Ridge, with their line resembling a giant hook. Lee was determined to push them back. In order to do this, the Confederates launched several brutal attacks against the Union flanks, or ends. At Culp's Hill, the Union troops held strong, but on the Union left flank, the Union line began to falter as terrible fighting broke out at places such as the Devil's Den, an area full of giant boulders, and then through the wheat field and peach orchard. One major site of fighting on the second day was at Little Roundtop, at the left flank of the Union line, where the 20th Maine, under the command of Joshua Chamberlain, held off wave after wave of Confederate charges. With little ammunition left, Chamberlain ordered an unlikely charge that caught the Confederates by surprise and secured the position for the Union. If this flank fell, the entire Union line might have collapsed. In the morning on the third day of fighting, July 3rd, 1863, Union troops pushed Confederates back from Culp's Hill on the Union right flank. Having failed to capture either of the Union flanks, Lee now planned an assault on the middle of the Union line. He ordered General George Pickett and about 13,000 troops to charge across this 3/4 of a mile wide open field at Union troops who were entrenched on the other side. Lee attempted to weaken the Union position with a tremendous artillery barrage of over 130 cannons before the charge began. In what became known as Pickett's Charge, the Confederates charged against the Union troops, many behind a stone wall. Pickett lost nearly 2/3 of his men as the Confederates reached the wall at only one point, but were beaten back. The charge was an utter failure and sealed the victory for the Union. In total, there were 23,000 casualties for the Union and 28,000 for the Confederates, a third of Lee's army. Combined, it was over 51,000 casualties, making this the bloodiest single battle of the American Civil War. The beaten Confederates retreated back into Virginia to focus on defending Richmond. Lee was so humiliated that he offered his resignation but was refused. Although the Confederates would win other battles, many historians consider Gettysburg to be the beginning of the end for the Confederacy. Meanwhile, for the Union, Gettysburg was a huge victory. Coming on July 4th, 1863, Lee was turned back at Gettysburg and Ulysses S. Grant captured Vicksburg, taking control of the Mississippi River for the Union. A few months later, President Lincoln would travel here to dedicate the cemetery and deliver the famous Gettysburg Address, emphasizing the importance of Gettysburg in the war and history. So with that, hopefully you learned something, and thanks for watching.